Do I need to buy a car if I'm going to live in Italy? In today's video, I'm going to answer a question that I get asked a lot. The answer to that question is there is no answer. I say this because everybody's different. For some people, a car is an essential part of life. They can't live without it. Whereas for some people, it's an absolute nuisance and they do just fine without it. What, in fact, is the most important thing to consider if you are thinking of buying a car in this country? I'll talk about that a bit later in the video. Iniziamo. Now, if you're going to be living in this country, I can guarantee you that at some point during your stay here, you'll probably find yourself in situations where you'll tell yourself, my God, if I had a car, this would be a lot easier. And I say that from personal experience. Now, if you're somebody like me that grew up in North America, odds are you probably grew up with a car. At least where I'm from, if you don't have a car, pretty much you don't exist. Walking to the grocery store and then bringing your groceries back to your house, no, God, it doesn't exist. However, here in Italy, and lots of other countries as well, which are similar to Italy, the idea of a car for taking care of your everyday needs, grocery store, pharmacy, whatever, it becomes less of a question. On that note, one thing that I have noticed in my 13 years here in Italy is that I think many Italian cities and small towns, they're set up for walking in the sense that everything is pretty much close by. And so I think this is why it's a lot easier in Italy to not have a car as opposed to North America. Now let's talk about having children here in Italy, having a family. Now, is it possible to raise a family here in Italy and not have a car? I would say yes. However, that's not my preference. I say that because when I'm in the car with my daughter, I feel that she's safe and I feel that I am protecting her. Whereas when I'm walking out the streets, I don't feel in any danger really. But let's just say that when I'm in the car, you know, she's here, she's with me, and it's a nice feeling. There are times where she squirms and tries to get out. Unfortunately, she's kind of growing out of that phase. Having a car is also nice if I needed to take her to school when it's raining. I also like to take her to the parks, and there have just been a lot of little situations where the car has made things more convenient and I get things done faster. Let's put it to you that way. Are you single and do you live in a big city? I think in this situation, a car becomes a bit less essential. I also say this from experience because this was pretty much my life for 10 years. Before I had a car, I lived in multiple cities and didn't have a car. But yeah, there were plenty of situations where I wish I did have one. However, for my everyday life and for life in general, I didn't really need it, to be honest. Now, on the topic of exploring, if you do in fact want to go and visit some small towns, then I think having a car is necessary. Does that mean you need to own a car? That depends. That depends on how much exploring you want to do, I would say. Oh yes, and obviously if you can afford it too. Now, whether you're on vacation or you're living here, and if you do want to see some of these small towns in Italy, or go from one small town to the other, I think having a car really is the best solution, and here's why. Now, most of the small towns that I've been to in Italy do have some sort of bus service. However, how frequently the bus actually comes around is another issue. I didn't take these buses, so I don't know, but I suspect that the prospects are not very good. Here's an example. I went to Vieste in Puglia about 6 or 7 years ago to visit a friend. I took the bus to get there, and that really wasn't a problem. Long trip though. Coming back, however, was another issue. From Vieste to Rome, there was one bus a day, and this bus left at 3:30 in the morning. Wow, there's still that same bus, that one bus a day that leaves at 3:50 in the morning. It was a blissful 9 hours back to Rome, and I can guarantee you that I probably could have made it in half the time if I had had a car. The bottom line is this: if you are going to be visiting any sort of small town in Italy, especially in the south, then I would greatly consider a car. If by chance you're getting value out of today's video, then make sure you hit the like button. And also, if you want to see more videos like this in the future, make sure you subscribe. Thank you. Andiamo avanti. And now let's talk about the elephant in the room. Can you actually afford the damn thing? Now, if you've ever had a car, then Italy is nothing new. A car is an expense. I think when it comes to a car, there are some universal expenses, and these are insurance, gas, which, by the way, it's much more expensive here in Italy than it is in North America, at least at the time of filming. There's also the bollo auto, which in essence is a tax that needs to be paid every year. And also, like in North America, you do need to bring your car in for a revisione in Italian, which I forget what that is in English, but basically you just have to have your car inspected. And of course, a car is a machine. As a matter of fact, in Italian it's called macchina because that's what it is, a machine. And every car breaks down, so you're going to have your occasional maintenance. Now, all these expenses that I've just mentioned are nothing new. Odds are if you had a car in North America, for example, then you're very familiar with these expenses. So to not insult the intelligence of the people that are watching, The point of me mentioning them is just to remind you. You got to pay them here too. Other things to consider before buying a car in this country is that my impression is that people drive in this country more for necessity and less for pleasure. I'm not saying that people don't go out for a joyride, but I think that this is a concept that exists more from North America, for example. The driving here also tends to be much tighter, so if you are claustrophobic in a driving sense, then you might want to consider this as well. If you're going to be living here, I think that you really should have a car because it does make life a lot easier. Not always, though. I don't want to make a biased video. And I say biased because I have a car now and that's my preference. I have also said that if you intend on having a family here in Italy, it's probably better if you have a car. Or is it? So I've decided to reach out to a couple which is very similar to us. They are an Italian-Canadian couple, and they also have a little girl who was born the same year as Laura. They in fact don't have a car, and so I wanted to find out why. This probably won't shock you, but the biggest reason why they chose not to have a car is for money reasons. When they said this, that was the only reason that I needed to hear, and here's why. Italian culture, from my point of view, is really about saving money. The Italians are good savers and they look to save money wherever possible in their daily lives. I mean, it makes sense. If you make the average Italian salary, which is between, I don't know, 1,000 to 1,500 euros per month, then yeah, at that point, a car is a huge expense. However, they do drive occasionally because, as I've said earlier in this video, there are certain circumstances where you need to go somewhere, public transportation is scarce, and so you really do need a car to get to these places. So what do they do? So if you want to rent a car by the minute, then you can look for those red Enjoy cars. And that's just what you do. You rent a car by the minute. And B, you do need an Italian license to be able to register with this company. The only hitch is that sometimes the availability is not always guaranteed. Something else interesting that they said is that when you don't have a car, you are forced to walk in many situations where otherwise you may say, let's just take the car, it's more comfortable. Very true. One last important point that I hadn't considered after I finished making this video is that this is Rome. This is a big city. And so when you live in this kind of environment, very often people might steal your car, they might damage it. Fortunately, I've been lucky so far, but luck is not guaranteed. If you are planning on buying a car in this country, I recommend getting something which is rather inconspicuous. Get a rather inexpensive but reliable car. This way, you don't stand out. For this week's expression, you can use that if you are in a parking situation and if you see somebody who is leaving and you want to take their spot. So maybe you might go alongside them, roll your window down, and you want to ask them, are you leaving? There are multiple ways that you can say that, and also it depends if you want to talk to somebody formally or informally. I've chosen the formal for this week's expression, and you can say it in this way. Se ne va, or you can also say, se ne sta andando. I think the first one is more common though. Do you drive in this country? If you do, leave me a comment and let me know what your experience has been like. Also, if today's video has in some way influenced your decision to buy a car in this country, leave me a comment below and tell me why, or why not. Now, if you are in fact looking to buy a car in this country, then check out a video that I made 2 years ago, and in that video I basically just give you the fundamentals about driving in this country. I also give plenty of tips in that video, which I hope you find useful. Thank you very much for watching today's video. I appreciate your time, and also to all of you who have been supporting my channel, my regular viewers. You know who you are, and I appreciate your time too. Thank you. Ciao, alla prossima.